The 2017 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series season, that's a mouthful, will be remembered for many things. The rise of Martin Truex Jr., the start of the iconic phrase,
stage winner, MTJ.
Kyle Larson's breakout season, Jimmy Johnson's last win and his big crash at Pocono, the return of the three to victory, Ryan Blaney's first win, Casey Kane's last win, Matt Kenseth and Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s retirements, the start of stage racing, and much more. Now they renamed the chase to the playoffs, but either way, this might paint a different picture. Now one thing that I am going to do differently other than stealing that section out of Racing Reference that makes every traditional NASCAR fan drool, I will be cutting out stage racing. There will be no stage points and we will carry over the 2016 point system. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. In the first 6 races, there would be 5 different winners. Kurt Busch would win the Daytona 500 with Brad Keselowski winning the next week at Atlanta, and then again 4 weeks later at Martinsville. Martin Truex Jr. would win at Las Vegas with Ryan Newman snapping a 127 race winless streak with a win at Phoenix. Kyle Larson would win at Auto Club after having 3 straight second place finishes, and after the first 6 races, Kyle Larson would lead the points in a Chip Ganassi Racing Chevrolet. Kyle Larson in the first 6 races had finishes at 12th, 2nd, 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 1st, and 17th to open the season. This would put him 4 points above Brad Keselowski, and there would only be 5 drivers within 1 race of each other. At Texas, Larson would once again finish 2nd while Keselowski would finish 6th, stretching the gap to 7 points. Next week at Bristol, Larson would continue his hot streak with a 6th place, while Keselowski would have his day ruined.
First green flag stop of the day, Brad Keselowski.
I think he's got trouble, Mike. I don't know exactly what's going on with that 2 car, but maybe we can find out once he gets in the pit.
Way too soon for a scheduled stop.
Yeah, it is, and he turned out. He was slow right in front of our leader too. He was able to get around him, but it was close.
Something's wrong. Something's breaking. I don't know what. Loose wheel or something.
And that's what he was telling his team, not to lose wheel. They were telling him the car was free. They told him to try to work more on the track bar to see if that would help. No positive gain on the 2.
Oh, Keselowski's slow is going into turn 1.
Yep, down on the apron.
I think there's a little bit more going on than just that set of tires.
He's really slow.
Now Paul Wolfe is working here with Brad this weekend because they lost their appeal on Wolfe's suspension, but they've appealed.
Pit here in the 4, you're in the 3. You're going to pit this time.
They've taken the final appeal step, so Wolfe can be at the racetrack. The appeal will be heard on the 26th today. It's Paul Wolfe's 40th birthday.
Mike, and I don't know if it's a right rear tire or not. It could be, but remember, they had some suspension problems at what was it, Vegas, when he had to race 1 and his right front hub, I think, gave out. So we find out from the map what they got going on, bud.
Well, they were telling Brad Keselowski exactly where his teammates are waiting for him, behind the wall. They asked him a couple different questions. He feels like he's got about 2 or 3 things possibly going here on the 2 car. So costly issues for the 2.
They're pointing at the right rear there, Matt. Something obviously is going on with that right rear.
Bouncing back and forth down the straightaway like they got a broken track bar and shake it real bad, and I can't turn the wheel.
So Keselowski's string of 6 straight top 6 finishes comes to an end here.
With that, he was now 37 points back from Larson. At Richmond, Kyle Larson would have a rough day, only finishing 14th, while Keselowski would have a solid day, finishing 2nd. The gap was now shrunk to 25 points. At Talladega, Keselowski would finish 7th, while Larson would come in with 12th, closing the gap to 19 points. At Kansas, Keselowski finished 2nd, while Larson would come home 6th, once again closing the gap to just 15 points. But at the Coke 600 in Charlotte, both drivers would have their own difficulties.
Jeffrey Earnhardt down on the apron past the start-finish line. A lot of smoke. And we were told it smelled like rear end grease. Caution.
Oh, trouble. There's oil everywhere. I think there's oil from the 33. Man, it took out some good cars.
Brad Keselowski's car is destroyed.
Chase Elliott.
And Chase Elliott.
What
started out to be a routine caution for fluid on the track.
Boy, heavy damage to
I'm
Chase
pretty sure
Elliott's
that's
car.
oil from that 33 car, because those cars just went
Had
crazy.
to be. Oh, caution.
Uh-oh.
Kyle Larson in the wall, turn 2.
I think
This
that
might,
front,
might do it for him.
well, that right front tire, I know when he hit the wall earlier, it had a bunch of camber in there, and I think it probably just finally got to that tire.
After this race, this would bring Martin Truex Jr. to the fold, and he was now only 4 points behind Kyle Larson. Brad Keselowski would now be in third, 21 points back. At Dover, Kyle Larson would lead the most laps but come up just short and finish second. Truex wouldn't be far behind in third, while Keselowski would fall out of contention.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Man!
And hard in the wall, Keselowski.
With that crash, Keselowski was now 59 points behind and out of contention, and Truex was now just 6 points behind. At Pocono, Truex would outrun Larson with a 6th place finish, but Larson wouldn't be far behind in 7th, only closing the gap to 5 points. At Michigan, Kyle Larson would win the race while Martin Truex Jr. would finish 6th and would grow the gap to 14 points. At Sonoma, both drivers would have rough days, and Kyle Larson would finish 26th despite starting on pole, but Martin Truex Jr.'s engine would expire.
But Truex just came out of his pit box and a lot of smoke. I think
Turning behind the
could
wall.
be making that left turn behind the wall.
Yeah, he came in.
He's out of power.
They opened the hood, and then he started up.
Is this going to bring out a caution? No, he's backing up. Okay.
Used to be able to turn left at the end of pit road. There's now a fence there.
Oh.
This would put him 24 points back. At Daytona, both drivers would crash out. Larson would finish 29th and Truex 34th, and now growing the gap to 29 points. At Kentucky, Truex would bounce back with a win, but Larson wouldn't be far behind, finishing second. At the halfway point, Kyle Larson was the points leader by 23 points over Truex. Both drivers were seeking their first Cup titles. Truex was in his 12th season, and Larson was only in his 4th. Truly a clash of old and new. At Loudon, both drivers would score the exact same amount of points and the gap would flatline to 23 points. At the Brickyard 400, while battling for the win, Martin Truex Jr. would crash himself out of the race along with Kyle Busch. This was Larson's opportunity to really open up the gap on Truex, but that opportunity would be wasted.
Oh, into the wall, right in the front stretch. The 42 of Kyle Larson into the wall, and a caution comes out.
Trying to hold it up here.
Right in the middle of the front stretch, flames from underneath the hood.
Here, unhook your stuff, you can get out.
Larson would only grow the gap to 27 points. At Pocono, there would be a turning point in the title fight.
Marty.
Rick, you can see the 42 car in the garage area. They have a couple of wins in the bank, so this shouldn't hit Kyle Larson too bad in terms of the playoffs, but they want to get back out on the track if they can. Originally, Kyle thought it was a transmission issue, but it was in fact a drive shaft issue, and just listen as it breaks. That is not a sound you want to hear as a driver and especially as a crew chief. So they have to remove the entire bottom part of the drive shaft tunnel, get that out, and get the part that's broken out, get a new one in. And this is a repair they can make back in the garage area, and they can get the 42 car back on the track.
With Kyle Larson finishing 12 laps down in 33rd, Truex would make the most of his chance and gain points by finishing 3rd. With this, Truex would take the points lead by 4 points over Kyle Larson. At Watkins Glen, Truex would win while Larson would finish 23rd and grow the gap to 31 points. At Michigan, Kyle Larson would have a
blinding restart,
splitting the middle, going 3 wide for the lead, and 2 laps later would go on to win the race while Truex would finish 2nd, shrinking the gap to 27 points. At Bristol, Larson would finish 9th while Truex would have a mediocre day finishing 21st. This put Larson 14 points off of Truex. This segment of the season also brought 2 more contenders into play, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, who would both need Truex and Larson to have a horrible race to take the lead in the championship. The next race at Darlington, Truex would have a solid day finishing 8th while Kyle Larson would only manage 14th despite leading the most laps. This would grow the gap to 19 points between the two. At Richmond, Truex would look on course to win, but Derek Cope would have other plans.
Martin Truex Jr. will have a huge lead as a caution comes out with under 4 to go. Now you can't count on that possibility of a sure win for Martin Truex Jr. There will be a restart.
Yeah, Rick, I looked up. The 15 was very, very slow. Derek Cope off turn 4, running high down the front stretch. And it was hard to see if he had a tire down or if he just had an issue. He was definitely off their pace there down the front stretch.
The caution would come out, and on the restart, this would happen.
Kyle Larson out in front at Richmond. And up into the wall goes the 78 hard.
This would hand Kyle Larson a good restart and the win to boost him to a tie with Truex for the lead. The next race at Chicagoland, Martin Truex Jr. would win while Kyle Larson finished 5th, making the gap 8 points in Truex's favor. The next race in New Hampshire, both drivers would have solid days with Larson finishing 2nd and Truex in 5th, and this would close the gap to 5 points. At Dover, Truex would finish 4th and Larson 5th, growing the gap to 6 points. At Charlotte, Truex would bring home the win while Larson would finish 10th and grow the gap to 18 points with 6 races to go. Kyle Larson and Truex were both going for their first Cup title, and now it was time to decide the champion. At the attrition-filled Talladega race that only saw 12 cars finish on the lead lap, Larson would finish 13th and Truex would come home 23rd, and this would shrink the gap to 8 points. At this point, it would seem as if we were going to have one of the best title fights in history, but little did anyone know, Kyle Larson's season would fall apart.
Of this first stage has got to be Kyle Busch, currently leading. If he can stay in this position as we have the 42, finally letting go on the front stretch, smoking down the apron here, Rick.
And there it went. So the ECU couldn't even protect the engine for Kyle Larson, and now Kyle Larson's hopes of making it into the round of 8 go up in smoke.
Well, this tells me it wasn't just an electronic issue, unless that caused some sort of mechanical failure. You see the smoke out the pipes. You know, listen, there's 100 things that could be inside the engine, but definitely a failure that he's not going to be able to recover from.
Caution comes out for the 6th time at Martinsville. This time it's Kyle Larson. He was in 23rd position.
Looks like he can't turn left.
Yeah, you see right here, he's coming off from what I think is turn 2. He's underneath the 51 car. We've talked all day about how hard it is to get the pressure or the rear tires to hook up. You see he's in a big slide already. Continues to try to turn to stay off the 51 and basically spins himself out, really. You're going to see right here, it comes all the way around and makes pretty heavy contact. When you talk about Martinsville, that's pretty heavy contact with the inside wall.
Got him in trouble, and I think Kyle Larson might have just got into the wall off of turn 4.
He got in the wall pretty hard.
Kyle Larson, who's running 12th.
Oh, he's in the wall up spinning.
Spinning up through 1 and 2 is Kyle Larson in the 42.
We're done.
And now the flames rolling from out behind that car.
Fire here, Kyle. Come to a stop. Come to a stop. Come to a stop.
See the winning that down, has the brakes locked up, fire's out now.
And look at all the damage on the right side. And it looks like more problems for the 42 of Kyle Larson. Coming to pit road. And this is only on lap 104. The luck for Kyle Larson has been bad ever since the engine failure that knocked him out of the playoffs.
I mean, look at the last 3 finishes, all outside the top 30. This was a car.
Half 2-0. Load SRC1.
Giving him all that data, he believes the 42 car is blowing up. They look under the hood to see what might have happened. And you mentioned the bad luck. Remember how we started the day talking about how Chad Johnson told me we could win, but man, we'd just like to finish. 3 weeks in a row, they have failed to finish for various reasons. And an engine failure started that run and helped them be eliminated from the playoffs.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
With an engine failure at Kansas, a crash at Martinsville, another one at Texas, and then another engine failure at Phoenix, this would cost him the championship. But Truex in this time would absolutely crush the opposition. He would win at Kansas, a 2nd at Martinsville, another 2nd at Texas, and then a 3rd at Phoenix. He would lock up the championship a race early. Going into Phoenix, Truex was up by 72 points on Kyle Busch. All he had to do was finish 23rd, and he would be the champion. Truex would finish 3rd while Kyle Busch would finish 7th. And with this race, Truex would be the 2017 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series champion. The last race of the season at Homestead would go on, and Truex would run solidly all day long, and he would put the exclamation point on the season and win the last race of the season. So either way, Truex would be the 2017 champion, but the narrative would be very different. This season would not be as dominant as people remember. Kyle Larson would establish himself as a title threat and a generational talent, but his season would fall apart with just 5 races to go. To give you an idea about how bad his season went down, in the final standings, Larson wouldn't be 3rd, not 4th, not 5th, not even 6th. He would be 7th. All the final 4 in real life would be in the top 5 in points, and all would have solid seasons. Well, that'll do it for today, guys. I'll see you next week for 2018.